Welcome to Overthinking It, where we subject the popular culture to a level of scrutiny it probably doesn't deserve. Da, 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 da. This is the Game of Thrones recap for Season 3, Episode 10, and also for all of Season 3 as we look back over Season 3. And it's available as a YouTube video on overthinkingit.com, and also we are putting this one out on the podcast feed. So if you suddenly got a midweek Overthinking It podcast and don't know what the heck is going on, well, we're giving you a special episode because we've been doing these recaps, but this more general one where we consider the whole series is going to go out on the audio. So, spoiler alert. Right now, I want to warn you, if you are getting this unsuspecting in your podcatcher, in iTunes or whatever it is you use, I want to warn you that we are going to talk about the plot developments of Game of Thrones, the TV show, through Season 3, and with some reference to the books through the middle of Book 3, which is where we are.
Yeah. We won't spoil anything that is ahead plot-wise of the show. We just might incorporate some details that are parallel to what's happening in the show to enrich the experience.
Yes. But we will talk about what happened in the show up to there. So there is your spoiler alert. There is your warning. If you're listening to this in audio, you can't see who the heck is talking to you. But if you're watching the video, you see that is Pete Fenzel.
Hey, how's it going, man? How's it going?
I'm Hodor.
And
I'm
Hodor.
And I'm Matthew Wrather, and so we're missing some of our other recappers. Some schedules prevented Ben and Shayna from being with us. So when you hear
horrible wedding-related accident.
Right, yeah, Ben is somewhere with the head of a wall. No, that's terrible. I wouldn't wish that on
the thing about the Overthinking It podcast is that no podcaster is safe from a scheduling conflict. It really enriches the sense of danger and the sense of risk.
So we when you hear me do the crazy things I do, like flog products or talk about advertisements and more and more of that kind of businessy stuff and Overthinking It, the reason we're doing it is so that the podcasters can devote more time to doing the stuff we like and don't have to do other stuff like take freelance jobs to pay their rent and stuff like that. So enough intro. On to Season 3, Episode 10. Pete, what was your favorite? We've started almost every one of these recaps with you giving a paradigmatic scene that kind of expresses the most metaphorically dense section of the episode. Did you find one in Season 3, Episode 10?
Yeah, I feel like the one for this episode was pretty clear, and for me it was excuse me, the wonderful scene with Tywin Lannister after he sends Joffrey to bed.
Right.
And he explains, of course, first that do you think that the king actually has power here and all that other stuff. When he talks about he talks about his relationship with family and his relationship with legacy, and it's interesting because it's a step more complex. And also more self-aware than we generally give Tywin Lannister credit for understanding himself. Because there's this central irony to Tywin Lannister's character, which is he was wounded by the inefficacy of his father as kind of a family manager, as a ruler, as a protector of the Lannister legacy, his sort of softness, his incompetence. And so for Tywin Lannister, it's really, really important to advance the family legacy. But he's also very, very mean to his family, right? And he doesn't appear to like them. He doesn't often act in their interest, it seems. Tyrion calls him on it. And he was like, when did you ever act in the interest of anyone other than yourself? And Tywin kind of gives a nonsense answer, which is like, when I didn't murder you when you were a baby. But the thing that Tywin talks about...
I mean, really, every parent could say that.
Like, I could have thrown you in the ocean.
Not murdering your children as infants or newborns, right? Yeah. Like, is a prerequisite for good parenting. It is a necessary but not sufficient condition for good parenting.
We're not doing the Mad Men recap yet. where we talk about good parenting on a slightly higher level. But Tywin talks about how the people who work in the interests of their family are more successful than the people who work in their own interests, right? And I feel like this is a really important shade to what Tywin is talking about. It's not just that Tywin has an emotional relationship with his family legacy and he feels like he needs to right this wrong. He has kind of a practical understanding of what family legacy means in Westeros. And in that working in the advancement of a family is necessary because you can't make it on your own. Right? Like there's too many things that could go wrong. Life for everyone is too precarious. Building a family legacy is really your best chance at accomplishing anything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you finish your thought before I jump in.
And I think this sort of ties into this episode for me and into the series as a whole, right? The season as a whole, rather. The series as a whole, sure, but we're not really at that scope yet. More of the season as a whole, because it poses the question of, what do you do now that you've recognized the, intolerably and unforgivably cruel nature of life in Westeros, right? Like last episode, we saw Robb and Talisa and Catelyn all killed. I know there was an Onion AV Club article that wrote about how this is the death of hope, right? And I had some slightly different opinions about the Red Wedding, but I won't go into that at the moment because we talked about that last week. But this idea of, okay, everything has fallen apart all around you, what do you do? Right, like, and Tywin Lannister's solution is you work for the advancement of your family, and you don't do it because it's the good thing, right? You don't do it because of your duty. You certainly don't do it because of your duty to your family. You do it because it's the thing that lasts. And he does talk about this in that wonderful butchering scene from, I think it's season 1. Is it season, or is it season 2? No, it's season 2 because he's in the field at war. Right, like, yeah. And so when Jaime visits him, right? It's Jaime that's in that scene where he's butchering the pig, or is it Tyrion? I forget.
No, I think it may be Tyrion, like newly escaped from Catelyn's clutches or something.
But he's wearing armor, so right, because they're at war, and he's butchering this stag or deer or pig or something, and talks about how when you're gone, family is the thing that lasts. But it also offers you temporal reward now, because it's the kind of thing that provides you a sort of center of strength from which to do things otherwise. And so that's sort of, to me, what this episode is all about, is what are the centers of strength that are able to endure and are able to move forward after all of the horrible things that we've seen this season have happened, right? If you remember, the season kind of falls into an abyss, right, on the episode. I get confused between the names of the Mad Men episodes and the names of the Game of Thrones episodes, because they're very undescriptive. The Fall, is that a Mad Men episode, or is that a Game of Thrones episode?
I think that may be a Mad Men episode.
Yeah, because there is definitely The Climb, which is a Game of Thrones episode.
That's a Game of Thrones episode.
Oh, I'm thinking of His Watch is Ended. Now His Watch is Ended. Right? So the arc of the season for Game of Thrones sort of goes like this, and then Now His Watch is Ended, it sort of plunges you down into this abyss. Right, and it's all about sort of death and things falling apart, and we see Jaime's hand get cut off in around that time too, as we sort of, and maybe not in that exact episode. And then you hit The Climb, right, where it's like, oh, we have to like be Nietzsche, and we have to like claw with our fingernails to get out of this abyss. That's more being Al Pacino than being Nietzsche. And you sort of get to this point where it's like, okay, people are kind of climbing out, they're facing adversity, and what are they doing? They're forming these meaningful relationships with each other. And you see, like, the couples. There's that Game of Thrones episode where it's all the couples together, right? Where it's like Jaime and Brienne, and you see all of them kind of gravitating towards one another. That's not called The Better Half. That's a Mad Men episode. I forget what that one is called too. But eventually you've gotten to this point where you've kind of like rebuilt a little bit of a nuclear family unit, and then the Reigns of Castamere is like, nope, and just destroys it, right? And so it's like, all right, now what do you do? What remains? After you've gone through this,
what you do is you check in with every storyline for a couple of seconds each, just to kind of keep tabs and tee everyone up for season 4.
Yeah, you tread water is what you do. You tread water.
I'm not sure that's
entry and you row.
I'm not sure that's totally fair of us, though. That's the thing, and watching some of the reaction on social media, after like. I feel like not since Two Girls One Cup has a piece of video like demanded that you film yourself watching it and reacting to it in quite the same way that the Reigns of Castamere.
It is pretty funny how the call for reaction videos is very influenced by people's experiences with Two Girls, One Cup. And when George R.R. Martin wrote the scene, he wrote the Red Wedding back in, whatever, the year 2000 or 1998 or whatever it was. He can't have anticipated that it would have been seen through the color, like through the interpretation of Two Girls, One Cup, as people love to see reactions of people freaking out at video on the internet. But the main thing is that, like, yes, it checks in with everybody, but more importantly, I think it shows what it is that they're going to be fighting for, right? And also, like, what it is that's going to sustain them, right? Or what it is that is sort of presuming to sustain them. And it has to be a level higher than just that we like each other, right? It has to be a level higher than just, or we love each other. It's more than just the individual social relationships, right? Like you see, Arya and her coin and her sense of vengeance, right? The first man that she's ever killed, and you have this sense it's not going to be the last, right? And there's this sort of, so she has her thing to hold on to, right? And like Bran and Jojen and Mira and Hodor have this really powerful sense of mission, right? This idea that they are going to stop the White Walkers, and that's what they're holding on to. And we see Stannis kind of at a crossroads where he could go in one direction, where he's going to burn Gendry alive and take the Iron Throne, or he go in the other direction, where he's going to go and presumably help out the Night's Watch in the north, and he makes the latter choice.
I want to put a pin in that and circle back to it in a little while, but you're on a good roll, so I don't want to interrupt.
So, but the point is that, and also Daenerys being held up by all of her like post-colonial, not even post-colonial, like not nearly ironic enough hordes of brown people.
Yeah.
I think I saw someone write on Reddit that it was like casting call, need 1,000 brown people to worship a pretty white lady. Let's not make it weird. It was weird. It's like, let's not make it too weird. It was weird. But the old idea of Mhysa, mother, right? Like, the mother being the kind of both the kind of originator and the caretaker of a family. These legacies are all similar and analogous to Tywin Lannister's legacy in that they're not just about what you're trying to accomplish when you're doing them. They are about the fact that you even have these things that helps you survive, and it gives you an advantage over people who don't have these things, right? It's Theon's dick in a box. Right, which like gets sent to Balon, and you see it's interesting because you see Balon and you see I always want to call her Tasha Yar because her name in the books is Asha and her name in the show is Yara, and I'm pretty sure that that's not by accident. I mean, it's probably by accident.
And I guess they figured that without having the different letters on the page, we wouldn't be able to distinguish between Asha and Osha.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Which one is
later? Right. You stole the joke I was going to make.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which one is the workplace health and safety department, and which one is the security officer in season 1 of Star Trek: The Next Generation?
Well, clearly Tasha Yar could have used a little more workplace safety, given the way that she approached that sludge monster that eventually killed her. Spoilers for season 1 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. But the point is that you see really sharply the contrast between Balon and Asha echoes Tywin Lannister in kind of a surprising way, in the sense that, like, he's my brother, he's your son, right? And Balon's like, well, he can't continue my line, he can't have a grandson for me, so now. I'm not personally, now, because he's had his penis chopped off, it's the North, maybe they have some on ice, they cryogenically frozen,
they cut me root and stem.
Oh, man, but the point is that, like, you get the sense that because the Asha, the Tasha Yar moment is different in the show than in the books. It's given much more of kind of a heroic moment. I don't even think that Tasha Yar is even there. That Yara is even in the Iron Islands in Pike, right? When Balon finds out. I thought she was in Deepwood Mod and was still kind of fighting her way across the north.
Oh, in the books?
it doesn't really matter. The point is they turn it into this big, heroic, hopeful moment, partly because they don't want everyone to want to kill themselves after watching 2 sad episodes of the show in a row, which is an issue I'd like to put a pin in and come back to. But also, I think because it really echoes what Tywin Lannister says earlier in the show and frames it in a much more positive way, in a way that we would see as much more positive. I'm going to go rescue my brother versus, like, I'm going to go murder this unborn baby. Right, and it's like the same motivation forces you to do both things, which makes you kind of ask why this is the thing that people are doing. And I think the answer is because it works. I mean, I've talked a little bit last week, and I won't go into it too much detail, about how all of these social organizations seem to be designed to get through the winter. And that we're going to see all of these things get tested as we move into the later seasons of the show. That's not even really a spoiler. That's speculation at this point, right? Like that's not. I'm not telling you things I know that other people that you wouldn't know from reading books or whatever. Even from this point in the story, you can sort of see that these relationships are going to be tested by the increasingly hostile environment around everybody.
Right.
And then so that's what this episode is doing. Is it's like giving you the centers of hope. So there's my little rant, like there's my little thing.
Well, the centers of hope and what actually can survive in the war of all against all. Like, what are the dominant strategies in that, in that fact pattern, right? In that set of conditions. Right. I think that, like, you sort of touched on it, but I want to underline a little bit kind of the weakness in Tywin Lannister's conception of family, right? And we could sort of set up the Lannister model of being a parent, right? Like Cersei as a mother, kind of horrified, but like unable to stop loving her son Joffrey, who is a psychopath.
Just a Don Draper of a man. Just anyway. Madman recap will be later. It'll be later.
He would leave you in the hotel room, take your book away, and then shoot you with an arrow. So, right. And for Tywin, like Tywin as a father versus Daenerys as a mother, right? As Mhysa,
Right.
But like Tywin's conception, and something that I've said about the show so far is that one of the like not main points, but one of the consequences of the way this story is told is that it's a story that wants to explain why our conceptions, the constructions we put on reality, are not adequate to coping with actual reality. Right, that is to say, things like honor, abstractions like honor or good, or things like this. Right, like it actually reminds me kind of Friday Night Lights, where the show sets up the all-American hero quarterback guy in the first episode, and then, spoiler alert, paralyzes him, right? Like,
oh no, winter is coming.
Well, apparently, Yeah, and so, so I mean, that's more of a game of throws.
Yes. Waka waka waka.
Zing. So and so that no abstract systematization of can really account for the incredible strangeness and incredible cruelty of reality, or at least of reality as it's depicted in this series. I have some hope that actual humanity can at its best be slightly more humane than what's depicted in Game of Thrones, but for the purpose of Song of Ice and Fire, the series of novels that the TV series is based on, it's it really is the war of all against all. And so in this context, I think the weakness of Tywin's conception of family is that it's another abstraction. You know what I mean? It's like you could put honor in, without any conception of the individuals involved and what and what they want. This is something you said, but that I just want to underline that like if you're not what is family other than the people, the people that are actually in it, right? Like what, it's.
I mean, that's the question, right?
Yeah, yeah. The idea of an abstract interest, of the thing that remains after you're gone. Well, ask Ned Stark what remained after he's gone, right? Like, I think the series has already given lie to this idea that, that you can, I don't know, take it with you in some sense.
Yeah. I mean, I would disagree to a slight extent, if only because of the really important presence, especially in the first season and even into the second season, of the crypts of Winterfell. Which are this sort of central place in kind of the introduction of the Stark children to the world.
Right.
The idea that Ned is in the crypts, that people are having dreams of Ned in the crypts, and then also that the crypts themselves are kind of associated with these old, powerful families.
But then it's also, it's also like where they take refuge, Bran and Rickon, when they're hiding out from Theon and his sacking the castle, right? Like, so it's not only, it's not only this sort of important kind of site of education and of kind of reifying, that's not the right word, but sort of making concrete the abstract idea of history and lineage, but it's also, it's also in a very material way, like a refuge. It's something that you can turn to as a resource, the crypts of Winterfell, for shelter when you need it. I had, just to get personal for a second, like when Winterfell was sacked, and as I got through like book 2 and 3, and I realized that like it wasn't coming back, and that like not only had we wiped out Ned and kind of scattered the kids to the four winds, but like now the castle is more or less gone. It's a ruin. Like I had this like very visceral reaction where I was like very sorrowful about that. Like I was really unhappy because I guess I'm on the side of stable social institutions. And,
yeah.
You know what I mean? And of history. And like, so I realized that like it is, it's real, it's valuable, and it can be even a material help at certain points. And yet it's exceedingly vulnerable, right? Like, who's going to remember now? I mean, I guess maybe the Maesters, right, have it written down somewhere in the Citadel where they can, like, I don't know, where they have the whole history of Westeros, like, written down. But who's going to remember? Right, when the in the ruins of Winterfell, when that staircase caves in, right? Who's gonna remember that there was even anything down there?
Right. I mean, that's a good question. That's certainly the way that the people in the story now look back on their pasts and on kind of the Age of Heroes. The strangest fact about Westeros, I think, that people have to sort of deal with is the existence of the Wall. Right? Because the existence of the Wall is proof to everybody that they should take pretty seriously that there is something worth considering that happened in the past involving these people, right? Like that we are not at liberty, and I think what it raises is that we are not. The point about reality it raises is that we are not truly at liberty to move forward with our own lives and our own cultures without any regard for the past that came before us. Because there are relics of the past that are part of who we are and the challenges that we face that are inescapable for one reason or another. And in the case of Westeros, they are manifest in this like perpetual low-level threat of zombie invasion, which people don't generally believe in, but at the same time, there's this giant wall, right? And and so it's sort of like well, there is this giant wall, and it's like, well,
wall didn't build itself.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, why is it there? And it's like. I just feel like that's such a powerful symbol of the way that people relate to the past. In that, like, we do know if we stop and think about it, that this giant wall, which is supposed to have magical powers and clearly did something major, has some sort of relevance to us today. Like, it must, right? At least as we search for some sort of explanation. Certainly the Great Wall of China is similar. There's ideas of ways of thinking about China that are very much informed by this Great Wall, this great engineering project. right? That defines the Middle Kingdom to an extent, and then also kind of separates it from the areas of Central Asia where things were more nomadic.
Sure.
Like, I mean,
And
I'm
this
not
is-
Chinese myself, so I'm not sure, but I would assume that that's how it would be, right? Certainly, like, it's based on Hadrian's Wall, which certainly informs the history of Britain, right? Like, that's what the wall is most notably, most directly based on.
And the idea, I mean, the idea of a wall, you know, not only does it indicate that, hey, like there was a reason that seems compelling enough to put in like really a lot of effort to make a, you know, to make a wall that's hundreds of miles long and 700 feet high, right? Yeah. But not only that, but it also kind of raises the possibility. It's the kind of the Dark Knight Rises question of like, if everything is chaos, where did all of this collective action come from?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like somebody had to stack the desks on top of each other.
Yeah.
So, you know,
so that
like
hero could climb to the top.
Yeah. Somebody had to, so that the judge in the kangaroo court could sit up there. Someone had to like pile the ice and stones, you know, like, and hundreds of someone's, you know, had to like work and die, probably over the course of many generations. Yeah. And, you know, you get the sense that there's like very deep sort of magic. I mean, I don't know, the Game of Thrones universe is like, I would really like some extended universe kind of sources. I would really like some sort of ancillary novels or novel series or things like this to you know, once a song.
Yeah, there's the Dunk
I guess
and
there's
Egg.
like Dunk and Egg, yeah.
I mean, there's a little bit, right? And then there's like a lot of erotic fan fiction.
Why bother?
Yeah, that's true.
When you have Podrick Payne striding through this episode like the sexual apatosaurus that he is, and right, like swinging his big tail around, and the wenches all giggling and scurrying away in the face, right? Like he has, you know. He has kind of achieved the task of the patriarchy, which is to replace the penis with the phallus, right? He's done, right? Like the idea of whatever his sexual organ, whatever it actually is, has been so far eclipsed by the myth. You know what I mean, of that as like a site of his power. He's kind of like the anti-Theon. But speaking of the wall, I want to move us on a little bit because we have to. I want to touch on all the threads of the story that we talk. Speaking of the wall, there was something different in the books about the way Davos convinces Stannis to go to the wall, and you get the sense that Stannis decides even over the objection of Melisandre, and that it's not that she decides for him, which is what is essentially depicted in the TV series. That is to say, Davos shows the message of Meister Aemon to her. She realizes that this is in fact the existential war of light against darkness, of, you know, Arhala against the others, and like, hey, actually, you know what, never mind, the Iron Throne is kind of a trifle, and we're headed north to actually, you know, conquer the enemy that matters, right? It's framed slightly differently in the book, and I think that the way it's done in the series sort of impoverishes Stannis a little bit. I mean, you get the sense in the books that he's his own man, right? In the sense that he's not buying. He's into what works, and he is a judge for himself of what works. And he even says, like, explicitly, like, you know, this red god thing is working for me right now. You know, it's got me this far, rather than being kind of a capital T, capital B true believer, right? That he is in the series. And, you know, I don't know. I feel like that's a stronger position, or at least has more opportunities for tension and conflict in the books than this, which is that Melisandre is the one who essentially makes the choice, who evaluates the situation and says, no, this is the important thing. This is where you should go. And by the way, you should save Davos. And he says, but I made up my mind. Yeah. No, you need to, you know, we need him. We need Davos, and they're heading. It's in the book. It's framed as, well, if you want to be a king, what do kings do? They rule. They take care of their subjects, almost like Tywin taking care of his family, right? And it's as a king, it is a higher priority actually to protect the realm, rather than fight over who gets the house in King's Landing. There are for the family of man, right? There are more important considerations. So so that's that. But so Stannis is headed up to the wall. We talked about Bran and Hodor and Hodor, and Hodor gave the game away, right? They could have totally still stuck with the direwolf. I don't know any direwolf, right? Until Hodor said Hodor, and then and that gave the game away.
Is that the game of Faulknerian man-child stealth? Is that the game that they were playing? It's like, let's hide this 7-foot-tall mumbling man.
It is.
Oh, Hodor, you're terrible at that game.
It is a tale told by a Hodor.
Yeah, full of Hodor and Hodor, signifying Hodor.
Yes. So so Sam and Gilly are now back and are going to Maester Aemon.
Mm-hmm.
John returns to Castle Black, all shot full of arrows and whatnot.
I feel like Master Aemon is an interesting character to consider, like his appearance in this episode. He's awesome. Master Aemon is awesome. I don't think that's controversial. But he paints a couple of dichotomies that I feel like are particularly important in looking at the end of this season. Chief among them is his speech about love, right? And we are human, the gods have, and this is from earlier on, and we are human, the gods made us for love, and that is our great tragedy, right? Or I'm sure he adds a little bit of a positive spin to it too. But it's that what is all of this stuff next to when he describes all these aspects of love and how this is what human beings really want, and it underscores the great sacrifice that you make when you join the Night's Watch. And of course, we see Jon and Robb made opposite decisions, right? Robb chose love and Jon chose duty. And you see what a horrible pain it is to Jon to not choose love because the gods made us for love, right? And love is what is most natural to us. Love is what makes us happy. And Robb, is very happy right up until the point where he gets shanked, right? Because it is our great tragedy that we're made for love and the world isn't made for love, right? And that's like a sublimity, and that's a sort of a pain that will be through all of literature forever, but is also in this story. And then the other big one is, of course, his duty to take up the responsibility and the power and the self-identity is redundant, but of being a Targaryen. Right, versus his own call when he was younger to go and be king, right? Because do we
know? Oh God, do we know in the series that Aemon is Aemon Targaryen? Did that come out already?
He talks about it. He talks about how there was somebody who once called for him, and then he had to make a decision. He's talking to Jon right before Jon decides to leave the Wall. And
season 2, okay.
Season 2, and he explains that he's a Targaryen and he was in line to be king, and he turned it down. Because of his duty to the Night's Watch. And he presents it in a way it's not entirely clear that going back again he would have made the same decision. Well, he probably would have made the same decision, but he's not necessarily advocating that Jon make the same decision that he did. He's not saying you have to be a dutiful person and you have to listen to your oaths rather than do what you will. He has a more complex understanding of the fact that there's going to be these irreconcilable moments, right? These just really painful, irreconcilable moments where you have to confront what it means to have made your oaths. And I think that's what he's saying to Sam, too, because he doesn't come down on Sam. He's not Sam, you're a jerk-off, and you shouldn't have brought this woman here, and you're going to be scrubbing the bathrooms, and I'm going to whip you for breaking, or none of this stuff. He's sort of you made an oath, Sam. Are you aware? Are you aware of what you're doing in this situation? Right? Although it is pretty funny, he's it's not what it looks like. And he's what? but that idea that like and that was really funny. Maester Aemon is old enough and also sort of seasoned enough in life and understands life enough in both its beauty and its terribleness and its agony, its ecstasy, its summers and its winters, to be able to hold into his mind both ideas, both the tragedy of love and the tragedy of duty, and also the sort of tragedy of honor and tragedy of family, right? Like which come into conflict, or at least your sort of your various relationships with who you are, who you choose to be versus who you were born to be. Perhaps is another way of looking at it. Perhaps, although that's not really articulated much in the story. But yeah, and then that's here too, right? Like, I guess you could connect that. You could connect Aemon in this sense to Daenerys, and I'll push this to you because Daenerys was born a Targaryen, and that meant a lot to Viserys, and we have not really seen how much it means to Daenerys. Like there's a sense I tend to think that the role of Viserys in the story is kind of really important. That Viserys is really key to Daenerys' character, and that as she sort of grows up, she sort of remembers him after he's dead. We don't get that because we don't get her point of view of her sort of reminiscing about what Viserys was like before he kind of went crazy. Yeah. But this idea that she does understand, because it was so important to him, what it means to be a Targaryen, and I think that that's kind of one of the things that we're seeing as she's crowd surfing over all those people, right? Is that she definitely sees herself as royalty, but not royalty in the aristocratic sense, like born into it. Like she is like the idea that she is a mother of these people, and that she sees no problem with being elevated above them, even though she looks totally different from them, right? Like her sort of like shining platinum hair being her big sort of mark of her birthright and legacy. The idea that she sends her dragons flying at the same moment that she reaches her sort of popular apotheosis is another sort of idea that she's sort of buying into this idea of herself as a Targaryen, whatever that means. That in the battle of, what's your duty versus, who were you born to be? Like, what is it you're setting out to do versus like how much free will do you have over your situation versus, who were you born to be and what power and what energy and what determination does that lend you? And you get the sense, go ahead.
Yeah, Daenerys is an interesting character in this regard because like so much of what she has done so far has been not preordained, right? Has been like through the function of her will, right? And like clawing along inch by miserable inch, grappling the stones with her fingernails, right? Like through the red waste and through, through the fire of her husband's funeral pyre, right? And through sort of the
House of the Undying and the Warlocks, right? And like all that stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And that like, so she's an interesting character in this regard because she's done that. She's done the climb. Right. Yeah. But then also there is this sense, and like I think just in connection of royalty, I have an association to Helen Mirren in The Queen. Right. Mm-hmm. And if you recall that movie, there's this very strong sense, and it comes out really well in Helen Mirren's performance, which is excellent and very economical, of like this is who I am because it's what I was born to do. I don't have the same responsibilities or the same freedoms as other people. I have different, my lot is different just by virtue of the fact that I was, born into this, and it so happened with the application of blah 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 blah, right? Like, and the toll that takes on a person, right? Like, because there still is an individual, right? There still is a subjectivity and an agency in there somewhere, you know what I mean? Being sort of subjugated to the general will. And so one of the things, it's very interesting, one of the things that Daenerys is taking on here, who knows whether she's suited to it, or not, or like really suited to it or not. At this point, right? She's shown great. What? Grit.
Ability. Yeah, determination.
Yeah, grit determination. yeah, and so a ton of grit, but not a ton of like administrative experience.
Yeah.
you know? You know what I mean? Like, and the people that she has around her, and I'm thinking of Sir Barristan and Jorah Mormont and Dario Naharis and Grey Worm, right? They're very gritty, but they're not like no one. She doesn't have a chief operating officer,
Right,
you know?
right. Yep,
So,
yep.
so this is, I mean, right? This is an interesting,
Yeah.
this is an interesting situation that she's going into with her. You know, I mean, it's interesting. It's like there's this burden, you know, that she's taking up.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll see how she's.
There's an aptly named celebrity that comes to mind as you're describing it, which is the dragon-esquely named hip hop star Drake. Right, like who might be fire and blood in his own right. But there's an irony to Drake, right, when he sings about starting from the bottom and now he's here, right? And there's sort of two ironies to this. The first is that he didn't start from the bottom, right? Is that he's from like a relatively well-off family in Canada, that he had a very nice bar mitzvah, that he that he was a child actor and a child star on Degrassi, and only then did he become a rapper. Now, when he became a rapper, he had to sort of start from the bottom of that. So, like, perhaps by his own description, he started from a bottom, but it was not the bottom. And then the other irony of it, so he sees this as sort of a long struggle to have gone through all this, but really he's fairly privileged from the get-go. So there's like a tension in that description. But the other one is that the idea that you started at the bottom and you got to where you are qualifies you in some way to proceed from where your current place is, right? This idea that, like, Daenerys is Stormborn, right? In much the same way that Drake started from the bottom, in that like it's talked about how all of these things that she's been through and this quality that she has of not having been sort of a cushy. She's not one of the great 13 of Quarth or whatever they are, or like the Magisters of Pentos, or the other highfalutin administrative titles of Yunkai.
Yeah, what are they? The Masters of Yunkai, right?
Yeah, whatever they're called. She's not one of them. She's Stormborn. She's rough and tumble. And then this idea that this makes her better suited to do this thing that she's about to do is yet to be demonstrated. And yeah, she's being greeted. There has to be a sense of irony when Jorah Mormont says, like, they're greeting you as a liberator, right? Mm-hmm. Like, which is, of course, the refrain that was said at the beginning of the Second Gulf War, for how, of course, the Iraqi people would welcome the invasion of the American army and would, as solve all of their structural social problems for our sake, just out of gratitude.
Well, we'll see how her effort at nation building goes.
Yeah, could go either way. I'm curious.
She'll set up a green zone around, Exactly. All right, we're getting close to when we're going to have to wrap up. So why don't we zoom out a little bit and talk about season 3 as a whole? What do you think? I mean, in this season follows the pattern of the previous seasons, where pardon the expression, episode 9 is like the balls to the wall, jaw dropping. Episode, whether it's kind of plot with the audacity of plot twist or the audacity of special effects or battle, and then there is some sort of denouement, there is some kind of stage setting for what's to come. And one of the things you said earlier is that it helps us to go out. You can't go out on Catelyn Stark's throat being slit, right? Like, imagine a series that ended like that, and she fell over, and credits, and that was the end of the season, right? And we'll see you next year. Yeah, that wouldn't work. So what is the kind of the meta game being played, I think, with or game at the level of like TV series construction about I don't know what, leaving us on a positive note.
So what is the metagame being? Well, on one hand, it's just what will the audience enjoy and tolerate.
Yeah.
That we have to make certain concessions just to like not. You'll notice on the when they did the recap of the previous episode, everything was very sanitized. Like, they didn't show Talisa getting stabbed in the stomach. They didn't even show Catelyn getting her throat slit. They just showed her falling down. They showed Robb getting stabbed with his back facing us. So they really toned down the Reigns of Castamere stuff in preparing for this episode. And I guess, I mean, part of it is that life goes on, right? Long after the thrill of getting stabbed is gone. And I mean, I guess part of it is also, I feel like probably the most important arc of the third season of Game of Thrones is the character arc of Jaime Lannister. Because the problem of this season was that you're taking half the book. And the book doesn't really break into halves the way that they want you to break it into halves. The way the book works is it has like setup, and then like 300 pages of balls to the wall action. Right? Like, and we've only really gotten through the first couple chapters of balls to the wall action. So clearly they're going to have to reorganize. And the different stories are kind of in different places. There isn't really a natural breaking point here. This isn't the end of the story. I think the person whose story makes the most sense as having reached a kind of new place is Jaime Lannister's story. And I think that the final shot of him coming back to Cersei and just saying her name, just saying Cersei, and him coming home again and her regarding him and looking at everything that's happened to him and seeing, his hand cut off and how miserable he looks and disheveled, and this look of kind of fear on her face, which is sort of like, can I love this? Right? Like, is this the guy that I've been waiting for really? Like, what's happened? I mean, to me, that kind of sums up the meta narrative of the season pretty well, right? Which is that you went on this horrible journey where you got just chopped up. You just got wrecked, right?
You got your hand cut off. Yeah. You got your dick cut off.
Yeah.
You got stabbed by Roose Bolton, who said the Lannister
shot you full of arrows because you didn't hang out with friends, right? Like
you stabbed an other with a dragon glass blade.
Yeah, like all this stuff goes down, and then at the end, it's like, can you go home? Who gets to go home? Right, and then when you get home, do you recognize it when you're there? In that sense, it's almost Hurt Locker-ish, right? It's like Jaime in front of Cersei is like Jeremy Renner in the cereal aisle. He's kind of looking at this and he's like, how did I ever live this way? Or maybe it's Cersei looking at him, or maybe there's some sort of regard for each other.
Well, I mean, I think that I think that Cersei, and I'm really projecting, kind of psychologizing her, but I think that there's something about her where it's like Jaime's out there somewhere, like God's in his heaven and all's right with the world. Yeah. And she hasn't had her conceptions challenged. She hasn't had her ideas, her kind of abstract systems, right? Which is like, for her it's love and this kind of forbidden love of her twin brother, right? She hasn't had that challenged in quite the way that a lot of other people have had. The Starks definitely, but a lot of characters. And that this is it. Like what did I love? What did that love mean? Under what conditions can I continue that love? What sacrifice? Like, how far can you push it away from the things that I loved originally, right, about this person, which were like his, maybe, I don't know, his devil-may-care attitude, his effortless superiority over everybody at fighting and stuff, right, and on and on and on and on. How much of this, what remains to me, like when Jaime does come home again, whether or not he can come home again, can home take him in again? Yeah. Is the question from her point of view.
And it's notable that they actually brought Jaime home early. That Jaime doesn't come home at this point in the story. He goes on this whole other detour, and he'll eventually come around to come home, but it takes a while. But I think that's a clearer sign that they really want his arc to inform what happens over the course of the third season of the show, which is that they make it end on him coming home to Cersei. And of course, having come home, having figured out how to love someone else. I mean, at this point, you have to think that he has pretty intense feelings for Brienne, that they've bonded as theirs is a love story, right, even though it's not one that's, consummated. At least
now
at this point.
Right, now is the sort of odd couple. Now we have the Hound and Arya or something like that.
Yeah, now we're back to like buddy cop story. I don't think the Hound and Arya are a love story. That's like the Hound's like, you're a loose cannon, Stark. And Stark's like, and he's like, I'm a day away from retirement. And Stark's like, I'm crazy.
So I'm getting too old for this ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point. And hey, Maisie Williams, right, turning on the super creepy.
Yeah.
Hello, I just want some food. I'm so hungry. You know, I don't know. It's interesting. Arya's maybe my favorite character from the series of books. So,
well, mine's the Hound, so I think we make quite a match.
Excellent. Well, if this buddy cop show has spurred any thoughts in your head, you can. The best thing to do with your thoughts, honestly, is to leave them as a comment on the Overthinking It post for this episode. On Overthinking It, we'll continue the discussion there. Thank you, Pete, for these several weeks of having these weekly discussions with me. I really like it.
Valor Doharis, man. Valor Doharis.
What is that? All men must serve.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. All men must overthink. Valor overthinkerous.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's that. If you would like to see the rest of these, though, I don't know. I mean, these recaps probably have a pretty short shelf life, right? As sort of entertainments. But they are
watching the show. Yeah.
Yeah, they are archived in a playlist. They're published under various YouTube accounts for different reasons, but they're archived on a playlist on the Overthinking It YouTube channel. We wish you would, whether you're getting this as a video or whether you're getting it as an audio podcast, we wish you would go to the Overthinking It YouTube channel and subscribe to that, because there's a lot of great stuff that's coming down the pike that's going to be in video form, including more TV show recaps. We still have Mad Men to finish up, and there's going to be obviously some Breaking Bad a little later in the summer. Definitely going to do that. We hope we hope you'll continue to join us for those, and join us every day, all day, every day, 24 hours on the web at www.overthinkingit.com, where we subject the popular culture to a level of scrutiny
it probably
doesn't deserve.